Hello. Hello, dear friends. We are getting settled to this moment. I have all the things. I am fully ready. I am chillaxed and everything. Okay. Hello. 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 Okay, I do feel settled now, I promise. Oh, I was like, what is that? It's the front of my journal. You know, sometimes the mind, she plays tricks. Hello. So excited that you're here. I feel like a little bit of a babbling idiot at the beginning of these because trying to find like how to put your boat into the river, so to speak, or like how to get on like a merry-go-round that's like spinning very quickly. It's challenging. So finding my entry point and like, how do I open these? It's awkward to say the least, but this is only my third one, you know? Like, I feel like we live and we learn and we get better as we go. So all of that is going on as well. I do have some things that from like this past week that, holy moly, the energy seems to be kind of crazy, which we did talk about a lot last week as far as the Cancer full moon that was this past Monday. Mercury and Venus are both retrograde right now. Remember, Mercury goes retrograde the most, 3 or 4 times a year, and Venus only goes retrograde once every year and a half. So to have them both retrograde at the same time is something of a rare occurrence. So that's still going on until January 29th, when Venus turns direct and Mercury will turn direct, I believe, on February 3rd. I know for sure on February 3rd, all the planets station direct. So like every single planet in the sky will appear to be moving forward. It'll be moving in the forward motion on the natal wheel, like through the signs 1 to 12. So February 3rd is like a date to circle on your calendar as far as just being aware and paying attention to like how that feels. Does it feel different when all of the planets are moving direct? Theoretically, it should, I guess. I have a really hard time saying that word because even as I say it, I'm like making qualifications and exceptions list inside my mind. Like, for example, my Mercury in my natal chart is retrograde, as are a lot of my other planets. So that there's a theory that says like if you have natal Mercury retrograde, that really during Mercury retrograde you may actually feel more normal, more at ease, more normal, right? At ease and comfortable, and like the world matches you for once instead of like you're constantly feeling like the really fast merry-go-round where it's like, how do I get on here? And you keep getting bounced off. When it's Mercury retrograde, all of a sudden, like you're in sync because like you're always like this. So when you carry that energy in your chart, when the actual retrograde comes around, maybe you feel better than normal. I don't know. You know, it really depends on everybody's individual energy. So there's that. Also this past week, and these are a couple of the topics that we're going to talk about today, and the only reason is because I'm just getting started. There's so much to talk about here. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll be caught up enough so that I'll talk about things before they happen. But these two things are things that have happened this past week that we're only going to talk about today. So the sun moved into Aquarius yesterday, I believe. Maybe the 19th. See, I got to get my facts straight. Oh no, the 20th. I wrote it down. See, look at me thinking ahead because you know I need it. The nodes moved signs. The North Node and the South Node shifted to Taurus and Scorpio. North Node in Taurus. Good morning, everyone. North Node in Taurus, South Node in Scorpio. And that happened on the 19th, January 19th. And that is an 18-month transit. It's going to be like that with the nodes moving through Taurus and Scorpio for 18 months. So I have a whole video about that transit all by itself. So really, if that's like the main one that you're here for, I'm going to tell you like that video that I did is probably where you want to go for like the in-depth, detailed, organized version of that story. Today, I'm going to speak about it a little bit, you know, this much, where in the video we cover everything. And from that video, thank you if you've watched it, by the way. A lot of people have. It kind of blows my mind. But it's gotten a lot of comments and a lot of awesome questions. So I have multiple videos in the works to respond to the things that people were wondering about. So always feel free to leave that kind of stuff on those comments, because when I see patterns emerge between, wow, look how many people would benefit from a video of us talking about, like, what if Taurus is in my first house? What if, you know, what if my Taurus is in my 10th house? What if my Taurus is in my 6th house? What does that mean for the North Node to be transiting through that house in my chart? Because every single one of those houses is going to have a slightly different experience of it. So that's one. Also, I really want to do one for if you have planets or points in Taurus already in your natal chart, meaning the North Node during this next 18 months will be passing over, maybe more than once, those planets or points that you have in Taurus. And North Node conjunct any planet is a really good news thing happening in your chart. So that's fun to look into. I also want to do one for South Node going through Scorpio. And if you have any points or planets in Scorpio, again, the South Node conjuncting planets, it has an effect. So it's not about preventing hard things from happening to us. It's about understanding what's going on in the skies, and maybe we can make sense of what's going on inside of ourselves a little bit more clearly, and hopefully get the most out of these energies that are presenting themselves. Because every single energy, how I've come to look at it, is like an invitation. Every single energy that moves through the sky has an invitation within it to go deeper into ourselves and to like learn about ourselves from a different perspective, to heal ourselves from a different perspective. So it's super exciting to be studying these transits. I don't know if you guys agree, but you're here and you're hanging out, so probably, you know. I mentioned February 3rd is when all the planets will turn direct, and oh my gosh. Okay, so Uranus also turned direct. I think I skipped that one, but I talked a lot in last week's episode about Uranus turning direct in Taurus and how that transit is, what do they say, like 7 years is a Uranus transit through a sign, thereabouts. I know it's over in 2026, so we still have several years of that playing out, and I believe it got there in maybe 2019. Maddie, if you have dates on any of these things, like as I give you what I think happened, yeah, if you could confirm, that'd be cool, you know, just for the record. I don't want to stop and Google like every single thing. But okay, so that Uranus and Taurus energy is going to play out. Thank you. Going to play out for several more years. Another thing that is playing out right now that is very much in that same vibration is the US Pluto return. Now, I'm going to talk about this here in a couple weeks when it's actually exacting, when it's happening, which won't be until about the 21st, I think, of February, thereabouts. There's a lot of different dates that I see on that. So it seems like it's the 20th through the 22nd. And really, the exact date isn't the most important thing, just because there's, like I said, years left of this playing out. So that US Pluto return has really been on my noggin. I tell you what, especially with the Cancer full moon, I feel like I had I'm also very new to emotions just in general. Like as a creature, I have a Pisces North Node. So like turning inward and swimming down into the depths of my emotions is something that I have to like consciously kind of invite myself towards. And the Cancer full moon and the US Pluto return, which I was studying at the same time, it was a deep emotional experience around these energies. And this US Pluto return is such a big deal because it hasn't happened in 246 years. So since the birth, since July 4th, 1776, Pluto has not been at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So the era that began in 1776, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence that was signed that day, the birth of our country, this is the first Pluto return that our country has ever gone through. And at Pluto returns, if you look through history in other, countries and regimes that have lived for 246 years, so they've had a Pluto return, there's definitely a lot of upheaval around that time. And so that energy added to the Uranus and Taurus energy, which is also playing out right now, it is just a lot. It felt like tapping into the amount of change that is going on in the world right now. And more than just the energies and the physical change, the emotions that people carry around that change, like the amount of fear of change, the fear of letting go of the old so the new can be born, the fear of like the other side, like we're divided and polarized at this point more than ever in history. And that's scary, like it's scary to have such a big other side that sees it so differently than you do. And that's like such a shared experience amongst everyone right now. Like no matter which side you're on, we kind of all feel like that. So I was watching this, we are going to get into the transit energies, by the way, I promise. But I was watching this video. I wrote down the name of it. It's a Tara Brach video, and I did catch her saying her name. So I'm now 100% confident her name is Tara Brach. So you can find her channel. I believe it's just her name. And she does videos every Wednesday. She also created, I hope I get the letters right, the IMCW, which is like a meditation mindfulness center in Washington, D.C. Her YouTube channel, though, has tons of amazing content of her speaking. And this particular video, which we'll link in the description box, it's called Resilience and Wisdom in an Uncertain World. And in it was the executive director of the IMCW interviewing Tara Brach. So the executive director is very much in the front lines of like meeting with people at the center, teaching the classes, being with the people who are coming there for services. So she was able, you guys, come on, man, we're talking, yeah, okay. They're playful in the morning times, Stella and Scooby. Let's see. So she's in the front lines of it and like really receiving the energy of the people who are coming to the center for services. And so she's asking Tara questions and Tara's responding from her perspective, right? And it seems like she maybe is a little bit more removed from the public, the front lines of it. And having worked in a grocery store during the pandemic, I can definitively say that being on the front lines of dealing with people in a pandemic is very different from what I do now, which is very removed from the front lines of dealing with people in a pandemic. I mostly stay inside my home by choice. I love it in here. But I don't go and like physically share space with other people very often. And that is very, very different from like being physically with people. So first, I just want to honor anybody who does work like in the public with physical people, with their physical energy. Like it is such a big flippin' deal to do that, to like, it's such a huge service. I just can't even get over what a service it is to actually like be with people in a time like this, because they are so scared. The fear is the most prevalent emotion, I would say. And it was like borderline panic at the beginning of the pandemic. It was like full blown like terror, just terrified. And so to be out there like on a daily basis and soaking that up is a gift to the world that if anybody is doing that, I just want to say like, I see you and thank you for what you're doing. But in this video, so like I've watched it twice already, and it probably won't be the only times because it feels very connected to both this US Pluto return and the Uranus and Taurus transit, where we're talking about, literally, to very harshly summarize, the birth of the new earth, like the dissolution of the old earth, the birth of the new earth. And that's freaking scary. Like, whether you're a dominantly fixed energy type person or not, letting go of our current reality and like moving into the unknown, that's like terrifying for people. And that's where we are. So like there's so much in the astrological energies that as I tune into like feeling my way through this, which is how I do my work, like that video, that US Pluto video has now turned into a series of videos because the script is like 20 pages, which would be like 5 hours if I sat down and tried to do it all in one video. So yeah, I've split it down, and now the last 2 days, the work that I've done on the video is to do my own emotional processing around it, because it's so powerful. Like these energies are huge, and like mass consciousness is going through something of a quantum leap into our next level. And those of us with higher frequencies, where we exist in a place where faith is something that we come by maybe honestly or earnestly, or because we've practiced it, we have strong faith in well-being is dominant and universal love is what is at the heart of all things. And that really, like, everything that unfolds is always working out for us. Everything that unfolds is for the highest good of all things. So there's a faith that exists within more and more and more people on the planet. And I realize as I'm preparing this US Pluto return video, because I've watched a ton of them, there's a million different, interpretations out there. The first day I sat and I just like took in like 8 hours of other people talking about it. And I'm so glad I did. But I have to say, by the end of it, I was like so twirled up inside. Like I was like nearly at a panic attack level at the amount of fear that I had absorbed. And I don't ever want to leave people, like let people walk away from my videos in fear. If anything, like shadow work is what I'm here for. And it was so helpful as I've sat with this over these few days, like so helpful to let myself process this emotionally and get to a place of touching that faith in everything is always working out for us. So if this is what's unfolding, this is what's for our highest good. And then frame my Pluto return video from that angle. So all of the videos, though, that I put out, that's ultimately my goal, is to not just like dump a bunch of like textbook astrology knowledge on you guys, which I do. I love it. I could rattle off all the things. But ultimately, we're opening a conversation where we can feel into the energies of mass consciousness and understand what's going on for the collective, and what can we as individuals do to help our collective make this quantum leap into the new earth. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing with every single every single transmission that I make. That's my goal. Obviously, I'm human. I'm not pure. I carry resistance, so sometimes I hit my goal better than other times, but that's what I'm here for. So the US Pluto return video is where I'm focusing next, along with the responses to the North Node in Taurus video, which, like I said, I went from like 40 subscribers to 400. I think it's almost 500 now. I don't even know. So many of you guys found me through that North Node in Taurus video, and you had questions, and I want to answer them. So that is so fun. You have no idea. Like, having questions to answer is like the jackpot. It might as well be. So I think that's 20 minutes of an intro. Thank you for letting me indulge myself in kind of the energy of what we're in right now. At least me, like this is where I am. And again, kind of like Tara Brach, I feel like I'm maybe a little bit more removed. I spend most of my time by myself and tuning into these things like through the energetics of it, not by being on the front lines with people, which is a much more visceral experience. So again, kudos to those of us that do that. Okay, so in the spirit of this being astrology and coffee, I am going to pause to at least have like a couple sips of this and maybe read the chat, because you guys like are all up in the chat today. I love it. Oh, Three of Cups says, I know nothing on this. I am here to learn. I love that. I try to like keep this beginner level approachable, because ultimately astrology is something of a vehicle to like, let's see what these energies are inviting out of each of us in these times. You know, we have these opportunities and we can make of them what we will. Thank you, Maddie, for putting the name of the video in the chat. These are exciting times. Yeah, like that's another like main foundation that I want to paint in that US Pluto return energetic discussion is like a core belief that I hold in like in this whole vein of well-being is dominant and everything is always working out for me. Like all of that naturally gave birth to like, I believe with my whole self that I chose my family, I chose the day I was born, I chose the minute, like we were participants in that plan, like 110%. So I have no doubt in my mind that every single person that's alive right now is supposed to be. And we're all here for these times because we wanted to be. And yeah, like a lot of us have the ability to like be those faith holders, and that faith is infectious. Fear is infectious, but so is faith. So yeah, like leaning into the US Pluto return energies was actually very clarifying, just like on my channel as a whole. Like, what is it that I'm really trying to do here? Because I'm still very new to all of this like spiritual work. And ultimately it's that, like, I want people to walk away feeling better. I want them to feel like they have a better handle on how to be with what is. And that's always my goal. So if you're here for that, like, hey, yeah, that's amazing. I love Tara. Like I was looking back in my journal the other day and had a huge, huge thing of like a half a page of like, it feels like such rich abundance to have found Tara Brach. Like I only discovered her a couple weeks ago, like maybe right before. No, it was in the second week of doing this. Oh my gosh, that was only like a week and a half ago. Time is, you know, yeah, it was felt like such abundance, like her vibration, her amount of calm is like hitting the calm jackpot. Like if you're trying to tune into that, but I also love the way she weaves together like neuroscience and spirituality. She, I think, categorizes herself as Buddhist. But she weaves together like all of these different understandings. And yeah, it's like powerful stuff. So yeah, talking about plant medicine becoming more available for those wanting to break free from the limiting programmings. Yeah, like that's a great segue actually into Sun moving into Aquarius. I am going to scan the chat real quick. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about like breaking free from limiting social programming, because we've just stepped into the evolutionary purpose of Aquarius energy. And the sun entered Aquarius on the 20th, so just yesterday. And the sun spends 30 days per sign because the sun moves 1 degree per day. So we have 29 days left of this Aquarius season. And whether you have your natal sun in Aquarius or other planets in Aquarius or no planets at all in Aquarius, the sun moving through Aquarius right now affects every single person on the face of the planet. It is part of the energetic soup that we all get to marinate in together. So it's like a unifying experience. It's like a common ground type experience, is that we are all living under the same sky. Like the pandemic really showed us that, like we are all way more connected than we think. Yeah. Anyways, okay. So the sun moving into Aquarius, the sun is like life force itself, kind of like it's the center of our solar system. It's also said to be the center of our personalities. And when the sun moves through a sign, like I said, even if your natal sun isn't in that sign, the sun is the brightest star in our solar system. I'm pretty sure. I think that's a thing. That's what happens when I feel like I'm pulling things out of my ass, but I think that's true. Anyways, when the sun moves through a sign, it lights it up for all of us. So we all contain all 12 of the zodiac energies. So that's the beautiful thing about your natal chart, is that in a very tiny little space, it's showing you, here are all of the different zodiac archetypes. You contain them all. And here are the planets that were located in each of the archetypes on the day, on the moment that you made your entry into this life. That's what the natal chart is trying to show you. How I think about a natal chart is like a toolbox. Like when we open the lid of a toolbox and we see what tools are inside, that's like looking at your natal chart and looking at your placements, and we can understand like, what tools did you bring with you? What job are you equipped for? If you brought a certain tool set, maybe we can try to figure out like, what is it that you're here to work on? Kind of like a reverse engineering approach is how I think about it. And yeah, there's so much depth to studying our own unique astrology. So when the sun moves through Aquarius, for example, the Aquarius side of each of us is illuminated. And that's exciting because I personally have a soft spot for Aquarius, even though I don't have any planets there. They're weird and I'm here for it. And there's a reason for that. So to go through Aquarius, to go through any of the zodiac archetypes, like they are so multifaceted. And that to me is a huge part of the fun. So I don't like to rush through being like, Aquarius is aloof and individual and they like freedom. Like, I don't like to do that because I don't want to read that. I don't want to I want to hear like the full details. Let me soak it up. You're telling me this energy is inside of me. I've never even thought about that before. You're going to need to be detailed for me to be able to find it inside of myself. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different sides to every single zodiac. I'll burn myself. So I want to stop here and give credit to an evolutionary astrologer named Stephen Forrest. And he has many, many astrology books out there. But his series of the Book of Earth, the Book of Fire, the Book of Air, and the Book of Water, it's like my main study material as far as like getting a huge basis for my interpretation from him, and then using everybody else's interpretation, as many as I can soak up, and still keep a hold of my sanity. Soak those up, and then my intuition sorts it all out, and you get the amalgamation of all of that. So without Stephen Forrest, I feel like I wouldn't be even close to as grounded in in terms of looking at astrology through like that evolutionary lens. Like, I knew everything was always working out for us, but he puts it into a language where every single archetype, every single planet, like nothing is bad. Not a single thing in astrology is bad. And he interprets it as, here's the good. Here's the good that comes from that, because here's the evolution your soul can experience by engaging with that energy. And I love it. Absolutely love it. So there's that. And that is where I got these notes for Aquarius. So I'm going to go through them in some detail and just take our time and like, yeah, see if we can find that Aquarius energy archetype inside of ourselves. And you can also kind of narrow in on your own personal Aquarius by looking at what house it falls in your chart. So like, let's say you have an Aquarius midheaven, like that's going to represent in like your public reputation and legacy is where you engage with your Aquarius energy, that we're going to get into like what that means. But like, versus if it's maybe opposite that, where you have an Aquarius IC, where that's now in your fourth house, your personal Aquarius energy is going to manifest like in your deepest private area. Like, that came out wrong. Like internally private, like, now my brain is sucked. Oh my gosh, Carly, Jesus. You guys, I gotta stop and recenter. Maybe some water instead of burning myself with the coffee. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. So, Aquarius. It is one of the signs that has dual rulership, and dual rulership just means that that sign is ruled by two different planets, an ancient ruler and a modern ruler. And basically you can understand that like for Aquarius, the ancient ruler is Saturn and the modern ruler is Uranus. And the reason for that was because Saturn was discovered way before Uranus was on a big chunk of Aquarius energy if you're not using both of them. So that's what we're going to do, is like go through both of them, go through these multiple different facets of like what does Aquarius energy mean inside of each of us. So rules in society, that is a very like Saturn type connotation, the rules. And rules naturally come with rule breakers, and rule breakers find themselves in the middle of really strict rules. So rules and rule breakers, they are like inextricably linked, and you have to have one if you have the other. Oh, seems like, I hope the connection's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll be okay. I got no other option than to keep on a trucking. Yeah. Okay. So, rules and rule breakers. So, this Aquarius energy is the side of ourselves where we have to individuate. We have to find our unique inner-born path of who we were born to be, and we have to live that. So if you have a lot of planets in Aquarius, the importance of doing that becomes like even more amplified in your life. It's like that's where a lot of, yeah, okay, cool. That's where a lot of, dang it, I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Because I just had the other thought that like, even if you don't have planets in Aquarius, we all have Uranus and Saturn somewhere in our chart. So that can also point back to like, where does your inner revolutionary spirit come out? Like your fight for freedom, where do you see that playing out? You can see that through the sign and house that your Uranus and your Saturn is in. So that's also exciting, but that these are the kinds of things that make it possible to spend your whole life studying your natal chart and still have room to feel into it even more deeply. Like this morning, as I'm learning about Aquarius and soaking that up again, like I've listened to all these chapters multiple times, but every time I'm new. And so I hear it in a new way. So I was taking in the Aquarius chapter and he gets off into Uranus, and I was like, oh yeah. And I was inspired with this question, like, what does it mean if Uranus is conjunct Saturn? I don't know that I've looked into that, at least not recently. That's in my own natal chart. And I found out that, like, oh my goodness, that's something that only happens like once every 45 years. So it happened in 1988 and it's not happening again until 2032. And I was like, interesting. I love finding things like that don't happen very often. I feel like those are like really important energetic signatures inside of your chart. And so in this case, I'm like, okay, so Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus. Let me go see what are Saturn and Uranus doing in my chart. And for me, they are sitting right next to each other at 29 degrees Sagittarius in my 9th house, which I personally believe is a lot of the reason that we're all sitting here right now today. Or if you're catching the replay, whether you're here for it live or on the replay, I don't think it much matters. Yeah. I also have Neptune in the 9th house. And so basically, like, I love to learn and I love to teach and I love to facilitate learning in other people. It's just personally really satisfying to me. So 9th house stellium, here we are. So because Aquarius represents this side of ourselves where we are becoming like the fullest individualized version of who we are, basically, like, the evolutionary path of that Aquarius energy starts off with you needing to be like really reined in. You needing to live inside of like really tight, restrictive rules that are not allowing you to live your authentic truth, let's say. And basically, the Aquarius energy, it's like, nobody gives you permission to be your authentic self in this world. At least they didn't used to, and still you can talk yourself into, there's going to be people that won't like this, that I like, come out of the closet or whatever, that they find out something about me and now they don't like me as well. Like that's still a real fear, even in today's day and age. So like, nobody gives you permission to be your most authentic self. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it. And that's why the people who are like really heavy in Aquarius energy, we call them rebels, because no matter what society is doing, that heavy Aquarius energy is being itself. Even if that means making people mad, even if that means that they don't understand you, even if that means that they withdraw all moral support, all attention, they have dropped you. They don't even hate you. They believe you're irrelevant. Like, that is the worst case scenario of like being your authentic self. And Aquarius is like, I'm willing to roll the dice. It's worth it to me. And the shadow side of Aquarius, and this is, I hear this a lot, which, pop culture, like I hear the shadow side of most of the signs. That's mostly what people like to talk about. And for Aquarius, that is that they are aloof, that they are detached, and that they are like emotionally cold individuals. And that is very interesting because that is the Aquarius shadow side. That's not the Aquarius light side. Like, when you're tapped in and being your true authentic self, you are filled with the zest for life and the flow of like your true self moving through you. Like, it's legit. It's better than any drug you've ever been on. So there's nothing cold or aloof or detached about an Aquarius who is being themselves. So be very clear that like that whole stereotype, I've seen Aquariuses who kind of wear it like a badge of pride. Like, I'm a lone wolf, I'm aloof, I'm not meant to be part of the crowd, yada, yada, yada. Aquarius actually also rules like our collective ideals. like our hopes and wishes and ideals for humanity itself. Like any kind of group collective activity is under that umbrella of Aquarius. And that's a massive amount of cooperation. And so it's not necessarily that Aquarius is the lone wolf. It's almost like they back up far enough to stand outside of the influence of the collective so that they can see, who am I really? What do I actually believe in? What is worth this fight for freedom? You know, like all of us have that inside of us somewhere. We just have it placed in different places on our natal chart. And then re-engage. You know, it's like you're not necessarily meant to just live out there for the rest of your lives. Remember, like we are all 12 of the zodiac energies. So the light side of Aquarius is that you can let go of what people think of you. The lightest, highest frequency of Aquarius is courage, to be yourself, conviction, to be whoever you are, the truest version of yourself. And this is why I love Stephen Forrest, because he does a great job of like weaving in evolutionary psychology in general. Because like when we play along, when we basically sell out our individual self, that looks like maybe you stay in a job that you don't like because it's a nice paycheck, and yeah, you'd like to start your own company, that'd be cool, but you don't really believe that you can make a living off of it. So you're just going to stay in the job that you despise because you want the money. So that's like when we do that, when we play along, there's a higher promise of security, whether it is financially or through other people liking us or other people offering their support of us. Like, you know, like for me, example, like I was very concerned about what my family would think about me not being straight. Like that was something that weighed on me heavily for years and years and years and years and years. And in the end, I mean, to be perfectly bluntly honest, I think there are a lot of them that really don't like it, but I don't care because I've gotten to a place where my authenticity is more important than them not liking it. You know, so that's the trade-off that Aquarius energy has to make. Nobody gives you permission to be yourself. You have to give that permission internally. And he also goes through that basically, like, when we get here, we are born to our parents, and as well-meaning as they all maybe are, you know, whatever, doesn't matter. No matter how good they are, they still teach us their version of what's right and what's wrong. And Aquarius energy, by definition, is you coming to these kinds of decisions for yourself. So again, if you have heavy Aquarius energy, meaning you have multiple placements that are in Aquarius, chances are early on you met with really strict opposition to like really strict expectations for who you should be and what's right and what's wrong. And the risk of you stepping outside of that in order to pursue your authentic self was big. And the reason that it was big was because that was the evolution, living through like facing the fear of what if they don't like it? What if this loses me my security, my physical security? What if I get fired? What if I, you know, all of these fears about our security keep us from pursuing our authentic self. And this isn't anything where like, oh my gosh, the sun's in Aquarius, we have to leap off all these cliffs and like choose our authentic self like now in the next 30 days. Like it's not about action, it's about inner awareness, you know, like, and it really does begin in a place of being aware that this conditioning took place. You know, he says in the book, he lays it out like basically we are all a product of our social training, our conditioning. And that's just kind of how human existence works. It's nothing to necessarily be mad or happy about for that matter. It just is what it is. ideally we can look at it like that. Depends on what happened to you in childhood, I would imagine. But I'm probably not going to be able to find it now. It's like all these things that I wrote down. Oh, we do need to come back to that though. No, I didn't find it, but I did find something else. Does that count? I don't even remember what I was looking for. So, you know, that kind of had to stop. I do remember. No, I don't. I remember some of it, but not all of it. Anybody want to tell me in the chat? Oh, yeah. So, like, there's security in conformity, basically, is what he's getting at. And he talks about like that security is part of our survival brain, which goes back to like the beginning of the evolution of our species. How did we keep ourselves alive? That herd provided significant security. So, to really walk the path of Aquarius evolution, you really do have to get dropped right in the middle of the herd and then have people who are trying to keep you in the herd. And the act of breaking free of the herd mind and realizing that, you know, you have an inner voice that's telling you who you are. And that's something that, you know, only you can tell you who you are. Nobody else outside of you can ever even chip in on that conversation. They can only offer things that either you resonate with it or you don't. And let it be that simple. And where it gets complicated is when it's our parents. And I'm speaking from personal experience because, again, we're almost brainwashed from the time we get here by whatever they think, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And so his whole idea around conditioning was that inside of each of us, there is a soul and there's a trained monkey. So realizing like which one is the soul and which one is the trained monkey. And the people who don't think that they have a trained monkey inside of them are the ones who are like imprisoned inside the trained monkey to be able to move over to like a soul level expression of your authenticity. He's like, you got to wake up and realize that like there are things that you think and do and say that are the trained monkey. That was your dad who taught you that. That was your mom who taught you that. That's an ingrained pattern of thought and behavior. That's not who you really are. Some things inside of us. And so the Aquarius season as a whole, like the sun moving through Aquarius, is like, let's light up that side of ourselves. Let's light up how we may have been conditioned, how we may still be living out a certain part of our conditioning. Like I catch myself all the time. Hard work was really important when I was little, still is to my family, but you know, I've woken up out of that, but I still find myself like using the whip like on myself, like making my like hurrying up timelines and like rushing through things and all of that. And yeah, it's like I still catch myself acting out of the trained monkey instead of my soul, where I'm feeling my way forward and I'm letting the energy rise from within me and allowing myself to be guided by that. So whether you have strong Aquarius energy or not, this is something that like we all have social conditioning, and typically the more we can let go of that conditioning and live closer to our authentic selves, the happier we are. But that process is full of shadow work, full of recognizing why are you holding yourself back, you know, like sometimes just because we can recognize like, yeah, this is the trained monkey, like doesn't mean that I'm willing to act differently, doesn't mean that I'm willing to express my deepest authentic self. And this was a really interesting part, as far as he goes through in basically every book that he writes, this is the whole point of like evolutionary astrology. It's very much rooted in reincarnation and past lives and all of that. So he goes through how, like, why do you have the natal chart that you have? Well, you've had that natal chart from the second you were born into this life. So why do you have that natal chart? The answer must be before you were born. That tells us, you know, why was your soul, what was it doing in that lifetime, and why did it come forward here? And he has two explanations that he offered for. This would mostly be like if you have a lot of planets and points in Aquarius, when you have that concentration of your energy, it really does, like, even if it's not Chiron or Pluto or something like that, that does like specifically indicate past life wounding, any planets in Aquarius can point to you have some type of karma around Aquarius energy. And like we're talking about, Aquarius energy is you living out your most authentic path. So he goes through like a whole thing about what does that mean? Like, because most of the time, like when we have heavy energy in our charts, like we start off very much in the shadow energy of that sign. So like if you have heavy Aquarius energy, chances are when you were a child, probably you were more on the shadow end. And like as you evolved and developed and learned and, you know, got better in this lifetime, you're able to more demonstrate like the higher frequencies of Aquarius. And that's true for any zodiac sign. Like when we have heavy energy in a zodiac sign, it just means like there was experiences back in the day in past lives that you're here to come back and sort through that, maybe have a different experience. So the shadow side of aloof, detached, emotionally unavailable, and the light side of bravely, courageously living out who you came here to be. What happened in a past life that made you want to like really focus into Aquarius in this lifetime? He offers two ideas. And one of them is that you were basically like bullied to some extent, like just bossed around incessantly, like just your authentic expression was not allowed, and that was very clear, and you lived like inside this little box where somebody else was making the rules, and you were just restricted your whole entire life. Think like, you know, maybe a nun, this is totally just made up in my mind in the moment, I'm not, you know, let's say a nun joins a convent, like becomes a nun and does all of that because she feels like that's what her mom and her grandma wanted for her. Like that was their expectation. Random example. And then she lives her whole life, like not breaking that vow that she took. She's a nun for the rest of her life. That is kind of like what this reminds me of. Like you made a misguided choice. You lived out a reality that was somebody else's doing all along. And then instead of like getting out of it, when you realize this isn't what I want, you just keep going. And so now you have karma in Aquarius. You like didn't live out your authentic truth. You let somebody else guide that path. And even once you realized I'm not on my path, you didn't correct it. So that's one version. And I would say that's a really mild version of compared to the second one. The second one is basically, and I'm trying to find like, where the heck did I write that down at? The second one is basically like the example he used is like the Jewish people who died in the Holocaust. Like you were your authentic self and they rounded you up because they knew one thing about you and they killed a bunch, hundreds of thousands. And they did it because of this one little fact about your biography. Like it doesn't make sense, but that's what happened. And so again, you have this like karma around Aquarius, where you did find your authentic self. You were true to who you were. You were practicing the religion that felt right to you. And then the social tides changed, and all of a sudden, the failure of the German economy is the Jewish people's fault. And now you got yellow stars on your clothes, and they're rounding up your friends and family and taking them away, and you don't ever see them again. Like, that was his example of the people who die in death camps, where they're in there for one tiny sliver of who they are, and they lose their life for that piece of their authenticity. So again, wounded in your Aquarius space. And that second one, especially, if you were attacked for your authenticity or killed or whatever, then chances are, basically he's saying, like, it's not that they're emotionally detached, it's that they're emotionally shut down. Like, they experienced such radical pain in a past life that they have used that detachment to disassociate. That, like, part of the shadow of Aquarius, that emotional detachment, again, they're not detached from you. They are emotionally detached, like, within themselves. They are dissociated from their own emotional reality. So, compassion. But yeah, like, basically, like, shell shock, PTSD, like the 1,000-yard stare. It's really easy. Like, I live with someone who has heavy Aquarius energy. It's so easy to take their detachedness, their, like, just floating off into their own world. Like, it's so easy to take that personally, like, oh, she's bored, or, like, whatever. It's just not like that. Like, it's a coping mechanism within themselves to handle really strong emotions, because in that past life experience, like, they experienced something so big that it, like, nuclear, like, rocked their emotional world, and they have a tight lid. So with Aquarius energy, it's like learning to be your authentic self and learning to feel, like, comfortable and courageous inside of that. It's all about overcoming fears of what other people think of you, which is really interesting when you look at, like, the sister sign of Aquarius is Leo. And Leo, not to, like, go into a whole thing, we'll get to Leo someday, but I love how Stephen Forrest puts it. He's like, Leo is the end of the spectrum where we are brave enough to let it matter what other people think of us, because we care so much about creating a positive impact, that we let it matter to us that other people are resonating, that other people are loving what we're doing. I have a Leo moon, and that makes me very sensitive to criticism. I have other placements that make me very sensitive to criticism, but I can't seem to close myself off. Like, I can't quit caring what other people think about me. I have to care because I want them to feel love. So in order for me to tune, like, what impact am I creating, I have to be open to their emotional experience. It has to matter to me that they enjoy what they're receiving. So it's just a very different archetype, and that like, learning to Aquarius, like, the ultimate risk that you're taking, the gamble that you're taking, is that at the end of the day, I'm okay all by myself. If everybody else abandons me, if everybody else, like, turns their back on me, I'll be okay, because at least I'll know that I'm living my authentic truth. So that's a lot about Aquarius. Let me see if I have any other notes. Oh, yeah. So, like, as far as the aloof, detached, emotionally unavailable, it's like their own life is detached from who their soul came here to be. So if the person's biography, meaning the life that they're choosing to show up for on a daily basis, if that's aligned with who their soul came here to be, Aquariuses are a lively bunch. They are extremely fun to be around. They are very eccentric. They don't typically don't give a rip. They just are who they are. And, like, I'll just laugh and laugh and laugh at the things that she says. And she's like, what? That's just it. That's just how she sees it. And so good. When you guys like, you guys, yeah. When Aquarius energy finds its rhythm with its own authenticity, it is its own life force, like very similar to how Leo is a light force, light force, all of the above. Like Leo's whole thing is that it shines its light out into the world for the benefit and enjoyment of other people. And Aquarius shines its own kind of light when it gets going in its own rhythm. Like that's where, again, Aquarius comes back to communities, to our tribe. So in this, 30 days of the sun moving through Aquarius, I'll invite you to do an exercise that I did about 3 weeks ago, which was a focus wheel of who is my tribe? Who is my community? And focus wheels, if you're unfamiliar, are just a tool that you can use to get your momentum going, to get yourself more clear on what it is that you're wanting to create. Like the whole idea of law of attraction is that we get what we think about, whether we want it or not. So a focus wheel is a way where you can spend 15, 20 minutes even making a focus wheel, thinking about what you want. So my tribe, my community, who are these people? What does it look like? And not necessarily who are they by name. You could, if you have people who are rock solid pillars of your tribe, put them down, absolutely, because you want to call in like more of that energy. But at the same time, like what characteristics do these people possess? You can feel them before you've ever met them. So your tribe feels like what? And like some things that landed on my focus wheel, my tribe feels like curiosity. Like we love to learn. We adore looking at things from all different angles. And we all are capable of feeling our own resonance and going through the process internally of deciding for ourselves what makes sense to us. And we all have a mutual respect between us that no matter what anybody comes to as their truth, that they've come to it. And that means that it is true for them. So there's an inherent respect that we offer to them because that's how we want to be respected in our truth. That's very Aquarius. Like Aquarius, a lot of times, like it's like, that's freedom and being your authentic self. And it is, but the community tie is that you're implicitly giving other people permission to be themselves and to lean into their own authenticity when you yourself demonstrate that you're okay with yours. When you're hiding your authenticity, you're not inspiring anybody to live out theirs. You're inspiring fear, the same fears that are holding you back. That's the vibe that you're giving off to everybody else. So yeah, to tie that freedom of like individual expression back to the community, it's like when I give myself freedom, I'm doing that on behalf of every individual. I'm allowing myself to have freedom, and every single person that I meet, I give that same freedom as I'm giving to myself. So Aquarius is like a live and let live kind of vibe, which is exactly what I want for this community, like basically let's demonstrate what mutual respect of like human nature, like we're all alive, like there's common ground between every single one of us. So how do we love each other and keep our hearts open to each other while still being our own sovereign being? Like you can still come up with any conclusion you want. If you're passionate and convicted that that's what's true, you'll hear no argument from me. And that is like that's a beautiful note back to the Tara Brach video that I mentioned at the beginning, where at the end of that video, she takes questions. She opens up the live stream to take a few questions, and those people get to come on the screen and like actually elaborate on their questions and tell their stories or whatever. And there was one woman who was clearly, if you're familiar with Abraham, like step 1 vibration is asking, and step 3 vibration is allowing or receiving. And she was very much in the asking mode. She was very much like in the problem of what she was presenting. And Tara's answer And then she like got the floor again to say like, how is that landing or whatever. And she basically restated the entire problem. Like Tara had said nothing. And Tara basically just like, you know, deep bow, thank you for your work, and was very gracious, but she offered no more because she didn't like, she wasn't soaking it up. At this point, I don't even remember why I was telling that story. So I'm going to read the chat for a second. And then if there's not, I'm sure there is more stuff in here. My goodness. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to get much out of this right now. I'm definitely going to read it later, which is so fun to get to go back. I saw one that was like, oh man, I need a key to all of this symbolism in my chart. Yeah, tell me about it. I have in the works one of my, you know, half-written books. There are multiple. Is an astrology journal where all in one book is place where there's content, like written content that explains like, here's what Mars is, here's what Venus is, here's what it represents in your chart. And then also some details around like what all the zodiacs mean, and then space, like journaling space and questions to take you through like putting all the pieces together, then where you can sit there and like fill out the journal and then go back and flip through the journal later if you forget, like, wait, what's my moon sign? And then you're like, oh, right there. Like I did the little exercise, and my moon is in the 5th house and it's in Leo. So that's in the works. If you're into it, leave me a comment, because, you know, like I said, my Leo moon really cares that people are into what I'm doing, which means I find it nearly impossible to do something that nobody cares about. If nobody else cares, I have a hard time caring. And that's always been a stumbling block for me, fellow Leo moons. That's like a whole conversation for another day. Oh, thank you. Maddie is also on the ball and sharing a video that, well, actually, it's on my website, so I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's good. And here's a little help with basic natal chart reading. I also have videos on my channel in a playlist called Simplifying Natal Charts. And that's broken down into like 10-minute videos and only one piece at a time. It doesn't go through everything, but I think there's enough in there where you could at least get the hang of how to even look at the chart. And then Google is your best friend. So like, that's how I've basically taught myself astrology. I've had some people ask, like, how long have I been studying? Where did I learn? All of that. I've learned a lot from Stephen Forrest's books, like I mentioned. And then otherwise, astrology wise, I have a life coach that I started working with 1.5 years ago who uses natal charts as her primary method to connect with people and have conversations. And so that was the first time that I saw my natal chart. So that was July of 2020. So that's how long I've been studying. And for the most part, I mean, she definitely, my coach showed me how to look at the chart and like how to, you know, match up the symbols with the table that tells you like what it is. And then you can Google Venus in Gemini, Mercury in Gemini. Like, what does that mean? And then you just read. So astrology is like the gift that keeps on giving. And definitely the more you spend time trying to learn it, the more it will have to say to you, which is my favorite thing about it, that this is basically like a lifelong pursuit. I consider myself a student of astrology, not a teacher of astrology. I'm just here to tell you what I've learned so far, and just know I feel like I'm only just scratching the surface. I feel like I'm in the process of learning, like letting it sink into like an intuitive level. And I have learned a lot intellectually. And so like the longer I sit with this knowledge, the more it's like seeping into the core of who I am, which is very cool, let me tell you. But yeah, self-taught, no certificate to show you. I technically then, I guess, am not qualified, but I do like to talk. So that's mostly why I'm here. Yeah. 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 I do some individual work. I'm kind of in a transition phase with that right now. Because my real passion is to put material on my YouTube channel for free and give it away for free. And even like this interactive session, and like try to like take questions and like talk about mass consciousness energies and themes for free for people to learn as much as they want, because I've, proven to myself that my knowledge on this subject is just a matter of my own time. I don't need to pay anybody else to teach me. Like, you can learn a bunch off Google and then listening to your own resonance of what's true. Like, just this morning, I was reading about the Saturn conjunct Uranus. Like I told you, I read like several different websites, which I highly recommend. Don't ever just look at one, because like they all phrase it a little differently, which means it resonates a little differently. And one of them, I was like, shit, like somebody was clearly pissed off about somebody with this placement. Like, the way they wrote it, it was like a hit piece about people with this energy. And it was just like dragging them through the mud of like, man, if you got this placement, you're some of the most rotten underbelliest, like you got all these things. Maybe I'm too sensitive, but at the same time, I was like, there's some real aggression coming through this article. So yeah, when you start Googling and opening yourself up to like everybody and their mom interpreting what do these placements mean, definitely keep your BS meter on as you go through that, because we're human. We carry our own resistance, and basically the fact that we're human means we're incapable of a totally pure offering. We have to offer with whatever we put out there our love and our resistance. So yeah, sometimes people get their resistance a little kicked up and then they like take it out on one of the placements. Like, you'll be reading about like Geminis or Pisces or Virgos or whatever, and they're like really dogging on them. And I'm like, that's not helpful. None of the signs, none of the placements are bad, right? It's all just what it is. And there's an evolutionary path through all of that energy. We just have to look for it. And ultimately, I think, let it reveal itself to us, like who we really are. It just rises up from inside of us. It's not anything we have to go looking for. It's already there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to cover is the nodes, North Node and South Node, shifting to Taurus and Scorpio. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, this is going to be short on purpose, because I did put out the video that has like, here's the whole story. It's very well organized, which is not something my speeches normally are. Normally just go for it and let the chips fall where they may. But that one, I really did put a little effort into what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And I was very pleased with how it all came together. So for the in-depth version, you can look to that. And for this, it's going to be super high level, just to get a little bit into kind of piggybacking off of what we were talking about with the Aquarius, is like, why do you have the natal chart that you have? Well, you've had it your whole life. So the answer to that question must be before you were born. And the nodes, the North Node and South Node, take us into a realm, a realm of astrology called karmic astrology. And that is basically how we work our past life experience into our understanding of the lessons that we came here to learn this time. And one of the videos that I have in the works is a comment response video, because like I said, like, people put so many good comments on that North Node through Taurus video that some of them were just too yummy and delicious to try to type back a few sentences of a response. So I have like 6 or 7 that I'm going to take into a video and speak to these comments, because yeah, you guys are raising some really good points that I think diving deeper into them is perfect. Like, let's do that. So one of them that I got was something about like, basically like, so we pay right after we do bad, and then we have to come back in a past life and relive it and pay again and like pay off this karma. And I do want to speak a little bit to that. I don't have the answer. I don't even consider myself a Buddhist. So talking about karma in depth, I feel like is really not my right or my territory to go into. I'm not an expert by any means, but I also got a comment, and I'll just add this because this is very similar vibrationally. I also got a comment from someone who basically said, like, I hope this is my last lifetime. I'm done with this planet. I'm fed up with this life. People annoy me. All of that. Like, I don't want to come back. I hope I don't have to come back. And both of these like draw me back towards like Tara Brach's content, where like in the video I referenced of the resilience in an uncertain world, life is what it is, right? Like it just is what it is. It's neutral. And the only thing that gives us a positive feeling about it or a negative feeling about it is the thoughts that we have about our experience. And like in that video, the resilience in the uncertain world, they talk about like basically the pandemic is kind of the backdrop of all of this. Astrologically, we know that it goes much deeper than that with this whole Uranus and Taurus and the Pluto return that's upcoming, and the birth of the new Earth that's, I mean, happening right before our eyes. So, you know, Tara goes into it so much more eloquently on that video, but basically the takeaway was when you're waiting for something different to be your experience, you're missing out on opening your heart to what is. And again, this is probably coming from like I've deeply ingrained this belief in myself that everything is always working out for all of us, that the highest good of everything is what's unfolding. So how can we square that with living a reality that we don't want? And this is obviously like a deep subject that, depending on what you're living, it can take a minute to like sort it all out. And I feel like for me personally, having adopted the belief a few years ago of everything is always working out for me, it has served me greatly in these times of uncertainty, where basically how Tara puts it in that video is something to the effect of, like, the only way that we are going to survive this period of change and transformation that we are going through is to open our hearts to each other. Like, she quotes a quote in there that I don't, Desmond Tutu, that's who she gave credit to on that one. And it was like, or no, see, I don't remember who she said this one, but if you want peace, don't talk to your friends, talk to your enemies. And they talk a lot in there about like, how do you honor your own beliefs when there's people out there who believe things that are so different, and how do you just let them go on doing this thing that you perceive to be so wrong? And her answer, I'm going to keep it to just that right there, because her answer is worth, like, go watch her video because it's so soothing, I think, in that really, like, this is a time where, like she says, in times of adversity, the ones who adapt survive. And the evolution that we are living through, this adversity that we are living through, they sum it up so perfectly at the beginning of that video. It's groundlessness, as in it feels like there's no ground under your feet. It feels like the only thing that's certain is change. And like I said at the beginning, like, there's a lot of people who have a really hard time with change. And, you know, they've been happy enough to like not change with the times, on and on and on. And then the pandemic hits and none of us have any choice. Like, there's change that's just thrust upon us, like the schools closing down for a little while and kids having to learn remotely, and, you know, wearing face masks and mandates and all of that. And like, that change wasn't really optional. And we went through it like at a global level. So yeah, there's there's so much change in the air, and there is like a really divided culture playing out. And basically the question they posed to her was, how do we move forward? Like, how do we not just like fight back and forth until we blow up the planet? Like, how is that not what happens? And basically her answer is like, we need to start this open dialogue of like, let's find this common ground between us. And she tells a beautiful example of like brother who was basically like, you know, my brother doesn't believe the same politics that I do. He's voting for somebody else. And I just like, I can't even talk to him. I can't even be around him. I can't get over my judgment of him. And she responds like, let's dig into like that judgment. Let's go deeper into what's really going on in your aversion to him and his beliefs. And she takes the person through like, you know, under that aversion, under that judgment and that criticism of him and his beliefs is a fear of what his beliefs could lead to. And that's huge for most people to be able to understand, like, really what's even driving this fight that we feel compelled to have with the other side. Again, no matter which side you're on, if you're fighting with the other side, like underneath that fight is a fear about what the other side potentially could turn into. And she takes them one layer deeper. Under the fear is caring about our world, caring about our human race, caring about the peace of this country, caring about the future of this country. And when you get down to that level, I think both sides are coming from the same exact spot. You know, like they believe so strongly in what they do because that's how they've come through time in their life, and that's the path they've walked, and this is the truth they've found. And you've walked your path, and this is the truth you've found, and 7-8 billion times. Like, we all walk our own path and come to our own version of the truth. And so how do you reconcile that when it seems like we'll never be able to compromise, right? Like somebody has to lose. And that's just not true. And it's like the evolution that's required is this faith, is this open-heartedness, is this compassion. Like, we won't survive as a species if we can't develop this. And that's, what is that word? That's like, it's not coming to me. Activating is a word that is coming to me, but that's not the one that I'm reaching for. Startling is there, but that's not exactly quite it. But like the evolution of our species depends on our compassion towards our fellow beings that we share this planet with. And to know that, like, here I am inside my spiritual work, and if you're watching this, you're likely inside your spiritual work, and we get to be part of this. Like I said, like, we were born right now on purpose. We wanted to be here for this. We're down. This is exactly what we came for, was the birth of the new earth. Like, holy crap, what a big deal. If you listen to Dolores Cannon's books, no planet has ever accomplished this. And she got that from the aliens. The aliens told her. And you know what? I believe. I've listened to many Dolores Cannon books because I freaking believe. If you want an introduction, the one that's coming to mind that I'm about to re-listen to and make a recommendation video for the channel is Between Death and Life by Dolores Cannon, Between Death and Life. So that one is about what happens after we die and where we go in between our lifetimes. When we are no longer in a physical vessel and we reemerge into non-physical, where does our soul go? And that book was such a relief to me. I feel like I had felt my way into those places. But she puts it out there in a way where it's just like powerful resonance. I'll also add, I do love that book, Between Death and Life, because the places that we go when we die, we also can travel there while we sleep. So you likely will recognize these places more more than you thought you would, you know, like I'm alive. Why do I recognize this? Well, because we still go there when we fall asleep. So yeah, highly, highly recommend Between Death and Life, and would love to hear from you. I mean, like I said, I want to make a video on it. I want to make a lot of videos, more videos than I physically have time to make, which is kind of a fun problem to have. But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that and how it maybe changed how you look at life. Yeah, anyways, not to get so off on that, but yeah. I also just found Dolores within the last year or so. I think it was maybe the very end of 2020, which again, like, that's like one of the things that I'm grateful for that came out of the pandemic. There are a lot of them. There was a spiritual group that started as a result of the pandemic. And inside that spiritual group is where I met a lot of friends who ended up giving me the confidence to begin doing my own astrological readings, which now 18 months later is like coming to fruition and me sitting here right now today. And someone in that same group introduced me to Dolores Cannon. And again, just like finding Tara Brach felt like massive abundance, finding Dolores Cannon like might have been even better. Her books are just so jam-packed with information. She called herself the researcher of lost knowledge, and she was a past life regressionist. She kind of invented the technique. Her technique was called QHHT. If you've ever heard of it, she's who invented it. There are lots of QHHT practitioners now. She personally trained like a couple thousand people in her techniques by doing classes all over the world. And she has done thousands of past life regressions herself. And I think wrote like 25 or 30 books before she passed. And so, yeah, like so amazing. I think Maddie's even done QHHT with a practitioner, not with Dolores Cannon. Harrison Bergeron. I haven't. I'm going to have to Google. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there's all of that like, you know, these are times of massive uncertainty, and there are some really rough emotional energies out there. And this is a time of like that, almost the evolution that's going to keep us alive is like a spiritual one, a spiritual like faith in the goodness of the universe that lets us open our heart to our enemies. Like most people are so busy being angry, which now we know is actually afraid of their enemies, that they couldn't imagine like letting down their guard and being vulnerable with their enemies. And that's what's going to save our species. So that's exciting. I think this upgrade is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a wonderful place to live once this upgrade is like fully fleshed out, which again, takes years and years and years. Plus, you know, this is so random. This is not on the nodes. I apologize. But Pluto moves out of Capricorn in 2024. Uranus moves out of Taurus in 2026. And then they both will be in air signs. And that is when the rejuvenation and the innovation and like the new earth, like giving birth to the new ideas, are said to begin in 2024 and 2026. So that's the other thing is like, you know, that like really gives me pause about that US Pluto return video, because basically the bottom line is like, especially the ones who feel like we've already had our asses handed to us these last couple years and like I don't think I can take anymore. Like I don't want to be the one to break the news to those people that it hasn't started yet. You know, like I just don't have the heart. So yeah, that's like the times of change are only just beginning. And so developing our muscles for like, how do you actually live through change and not lose your mind? And the answer is faith. The answer is compassion towards ourselves and towards other people. The answer is love, unconditional love towards ourselves and towards other people. And without that, yeah, likely we will fight until we blow up the planet. Like that's how most other civilizations through history have ended. Multiple planets through history have ended that way, if you subscribe to Dolores Cannon's work. So we could be one of those, you know, no big deal. Like we'll just go down in history the same as everybody else. Or we could be the first planet to do what they say we're doing, where the frequency of the entire planet is ascending. So like not just a spiritual awakening on an individual level, but a spiritual awakening of the collective. And that's not even to mention that we have Jupiter conjunct Neptune in Pisces this year. And that's basically what that calls for, is a spiritual awakening of the collective. So that's playing out like through May of this year. The Jupiter Neptune conjunction is happening, I think here in a couple months, it'll be pretty exact. But right now they're both in Pisces, and like we're already seeing the beginnings of it. And then Jupiter will move out into Aries for a few months and then come back for just a couple months at the end of this year. And then it will move on. And so that this whole year is like supposed to be that playing out of this awakening of mass consciousness. And so exciting, like so many more people coming online, so many more friends to play with. And yeah, there have been people who have been here a long time and they know a bunch of stuff about spirituality, but you guys, the ones who are new, who are like just coming to it, like it takes so much courage to wake up. Like no matter if you did it a long time ago when, yeah, like the setting, the environment wasn't super conducive to you being spiritual. I'm thinking of like first wave volunteers, again, going back to a Dolores Cannon book, first wave volunteers who came super early on, like born in the 30s and 40s, and they made a path. They like cut down brush and like met up with some serious resistance as they laid down this path of spirituality so that the second wave and the third wave of volunteers could come in and like usher in this spiritual awakening of the collective. Like, again, this is what we came for. So I don't know about you, but I'm like really freaking excited. Maddie's got me covered with like all the references of everything, that all the random things. Oh my gosh. So she also says in here, change is scary, but together we got this. That reminds me, she gave me this idea because she makes, she has a playlist for each element. So like an earth energy playlist, air energy, fire energy, water energy. Super amazing. I've had them on repeat for days now since she told me. And we talked about like making a playlist for like each specific transit. And this morning I started a playlist for the US Pluto return. And the first song on it is called All Right. Let me just see. Obviously I can't play it or I'll get a copyright strike, but I can tell you that it's called All Right by Anthony Ramos and Cynthia Erivo, Erivo. It's on the Freedom EP. Yeah, it's so good. And I'm going to put the link to that US Pluto return playlist because that's basically the vibe, is like, it'll be all right. It really is. Like if we can hold steady in our faith that, you know, like that's actually a good segue back into the nodes as far as like the North node moving through Taurus and the South node moving through Scorpio. This does take us into karmic astrology, and the North node, I said in the video, it's like pretend each one is like a car wash, and the process of the wash is different inside the North node car wash and the South node car wash. Like they each are doing something different. Like in the North node car wash, it's very conducive, it's very warm and sudsy and very comfortable, exciting, all of that. In the South node car wash, it's like they got a power washer and they're like blasting you with sandstone. It's not as comfortable. It's not as nice. It's a lot more like shadow work type processes. So there's both happening simultaneously. So on the North node side of things, we're building that energy. In this case, Taurus, we're building up the highest frequencies of Taurus energy in our vibration and our mix of vibrations. We want to lean into the highest frequencies of Taurus. And on the South node end, we purge. So we let go of whatever energy, whatever the lowest frequencies of that energy are. So in this case, Scorpio. So we're purging our lowest frequencies of Scorpio. So like you can see they go together, because the only reason we have room to build up our Taurus is because we're letting go of the low frequencies of Scorpio. So super quick, again, if you want the long version, check out the video, but the short version is Scorpio lowest frequencies look like emotional manipulation, fear, controlling others, generally like finding power outside of ourselves, meaning we subscribe to authority figures who, like, we're our own authority figure. Maybe you're in a relationship where, like, I think, no, we won't go there. Yeah, like being in a relationship situation where you are clearly subverting your own needs to keep the peace with somebody else. So like you've basically given them your power in that situation. And so the South Node moving through Scorpio is about letting go of those lowest frequencies where you're not understanding where your power really comes from. And our power is spiritual. Our power is inside of our soul. Our power rises up from inside of us through our own individual authenticity. So that's good to know. That's exciting, because basically, most, as far as I can tell, which this is real simple compared to all the situations in the world, but like all the suffering and grief and fighting and everything is people misallocating power, people like putting power outside of themselves instead of bringing it in and owning it for themselves, their own individual power. So this South Node through Scorpio time is very exciting, considering everything that we're talking about with this whole giving birth to the new earth concept and putting the pieces together around, practically speaking, how is that going to happen? And this South Node through Scorpio is a big piece. Scorpio also rules lies and deceit and betrayal and cover-ups and exposés in general, investigations, bringing the truth to light, secrets that are now revealed to the world, secrets that we're trying to keep hidden and that nobody was ever going to find that out. And now it's being put on blast for the whole world to know. That's what this South Node through Scorpio is all about. We're going to air out the closet, all the hurt, all the pain, all the things that we've shoved down over the last 19 and a half years. We get that coming back up. And basically, we get shown all the ways that we've left power outside of ourselves. And what that looks like is opposition or oppression, suppression from others. When they show up in your world to like exert power over you, we can interpret that. And I'm interpreting this like from my own life recently. When we feel like someone else is overpowering us, we have in our mind come to the conclusion, like on a subconscious level, that they are more powerful, therefore they are capable of overpowering us, instead of acknowledging that like I am powerful too. So bringing our power back inside of ourselves, like every time we're met with that opposition or that suppression or oppression, the answer is realizing you don't have to fight with anybody to get your power. All you have to do is like turn into it, and it's already there. So the answer to this Scorpio purge and this like shadow work, airing of all the ways that we've misallocated our power, the answer to that is on the Taurus end. And Taurus is, again, to go through any of these archetypes, they're so multifaceted, but I do that in the video. So by all means, check that out there. But Taurus is our inner animal. It's our animal instincts. It's our ability to find peace and calm inside of ourselves. It's our five senses. It's our sense of inner peace. Like Taurus is often associated with money and security, but ultimately those things are just in service of providing for your own security. So if you have a lot of money, chances are you're going to have food, like you'll have food, you'll have shelter, you'll have transportation, you'll have the things that you need because you have money. So it's not about money per se with Taurus, it's about security. And this axis of North Node through Taurus, South Node through Scorpio, the process that we're undergoing is letting go of external sources of power and relocating that sense of power inside of ourselves so that we can own it for ourselves, so that we can show up in the world and open our heart to other people, because we know where our power comes from. We know that, like, even if I'm vulnerable with this person, they can't hurt me because my sense of self-worth exists inside of myself in a place where other people just don't have access to that. That's ultimately the kind of transformation that this Taurus North Node, Scorpio South Node is wanting from us. And really, like, we'll all have our own experience of it. You can also look back at the last time that this happened, which was like 19 and a half years ago. April of 03 to December of 04 was the last time the North Node moved through, the North Node moved through Taurus and the South Node moved through Scorpio, back in April of 03 to December of 04. So you can look back there to see, you know, what were the power struggle type situations that manifested for you at that time. And not that that's what's going to happen this time, but those are the kinds of things that, like, basically you get to see a reflection of, you know, is your power securely located inside of yourself, or are you letting other people hold it for you? Because if they're holding it, they will be suppressing you during this transit. They have to, because you need to realize that they're holding your power so that you can take it back from them and put it back inside of yourself. And that's necessary because of everything that we're talking about right now with this whole, you know, collective upgrade of mass consciousness, that we are going through this ascension process, like, as a collective. And part of how we get there is this open-heartedness. And to be open-hearted, you need to be owning your own personal power. You need to understand that nobody has power over you, not even the government, not police officers, those are things that have power because we buy into them. And the new earth can have power too if we buy into that. And that's, like, kind of the takeaway of this North Node through Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, Pluto return in Capricorn. The question to really focus on, and as I sit with this, like, I am processing my own emotions around all of these things, and, you know, the ending of the old earth and the beginning of the new earth and the amount of change. Like, don't get me wrong, like, there are emotions to be processed that likely we all will have to come face to face with that at some point. But the real question to, like, use as the light at the end of the tunnel is, like, we are literally watching the new earth come to life. So what is it that you want that to look like? What is it that you think it's going to be like? Like, how are people in the new earth? What does it look like? And personally, I think the new earth is a place where unconditional love is at the heart of all things. Like, you know, when you think about the US Pluto return, especially, the Pluto return in general, that once every 246 years, it speaks to going back to where we founded and reevaluating, like, did we live up to what we said we were going to do? And I mean, the Declaration of Independence wasn't that bad. Like, if we had written that and meant it, we would have been, like, on a golden path, but we didn't mean what we said when we said everybody's created equal. All men are created equal. All men have the same rights. Like, we just didn't mean that. And so it's like, maybe we don't even have to trash the entire system, but if we could just mean what we said, like, that would be, I think we'd be doing a lot better, you know? Like, so it's scary, but when we get everything settled down to a blank slate, there's also limitless potential in that. And I gotta think those of you guys watching, we're at least, like, leaning into this idea of kind of like the focus wheel, like, who's your tribe, who's your community, what is the energetics of that? Do the same thing for the new earth. Like, what are the energetics of the new earth? What would it look like to live in an earth where unconditional love is at the heart of all things? What would that look like? You know, how would that shape homelessness? How would that shape kids going hungry anywhere? How would that shape, you know, refugees? There wouldn't be refugees because there wouldn't be tyrants, because people would have their own power inside of themselves instead of having to take it away from entire populations. So yeah, like spend some time with that. Like picture the new earth in your mind, fill it with the unconditional love that you can feel inside of yourself, and hold that light. And basically, the idea, and Tara gets to this at the end of that video, is like we can continue to focus on the old, the things that are broken, the things that aren't the way we want them to be. We can continue to focus on that as long as we want. And every time we refocus on it, we're keeping it alive. We can just as easily bring the new earth to life if we'll turn our focus and focus on the new, focus on how we want it to be, focus on how it is inside of our hearts. Like if you turn inward and tune into your own unconditional love, you can feel the new earth. It already exists. It's there for us to walk towards as soon as we're ready. And I think the more of us that are turning into that and spending our time focusing there and bringing it to life through our own individual actions, that, like I said, like, yeah, fear is contagious, but so is faith. Faith is just as contagious. So if our heart is at peace because we know we are walking towards / standing in kind of right now the new earth, and our heart is peaceful because we know everything is always working out for us, those peaceful hearts, they will run through the collective the same as a fearful heart will. I believe, I think. That's why I show up on here, you know, like, and do my videos, because I want to put out my interpretation. Like I said, I'm human, it's not perfect, but my interpretation of what a world based on unconditional love could really look like. So I'm going to leave you with that as far as the nodes shifting to Taurus and Scorpio. Like I said, they'll be here for quite a while, 18 months. So we will continue to talk about the nodes and get into, you know, as they make aspects with other planets and all of that, we'll continue to keep these in the conversation. Also watch the channel for other videos around these nodes, because yes, like I said, like you guys showed up for that video. So I want to reciprocate and like answer some questions and put some more stuff out there. At this moment, I need to have a restroom break. So I'm going to take just a few minutes. And then I will come back and we will talk about Mars entering Capricorn. I'm going to say I got like another 30 minutes in me on Mars entering Capricorn. So if you can hang out for that, I'll be back in a few, or if you want to catch the rest on the replay, whatever works for you. Okay. I'll be right back. I got to take this.